So what? You file paperwork for the Army. My cousin grinned at the barbecue. I wiped my hands on a napkin. No, I fly. He laughed. Oh, yeah. What's your call sign? I said, Iron Widow. His dad, a Navy SEAL, went still. Boy apologized now. He knew exactly who I was. The smoke from the grill curled up into the Georgia afternoon sky, mixing with the laughter and chatter of my extended family gathering for the 4th of July. I stood near the picnic table, plate in hand, watching my Aunt Linda flip burgers, while my younger cousins ran through the sprinkler on the lawn. It had been 3 years since I'd made it to one of these reunions, and part of me wondered if coming back was a mistake. My cousin Derrick approached, with that same cocky swagger he'd carried since high school. He was 23 now, a year out of college with a marketing degree and an inflated sense of his own importance. His polo shirt looked like it cost more than my entire civilian wardrobe, and his perfectly gelled hair hadn't moved an inch, despite the humidity. Jake, man, it's been forever, he said, extending his hand for one of those aggressive handshakes that's really a competition. What have you been up to, still in the service? Yeah, still in, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Cool. He grabbed a beer from the cooler, twisting off the cap. So what do you do exactly? Like, what's your job? I'm a pilot. Derrick's eyebrows shot up, but his grin turned condescending. Oh, so like you fly transport planes, moving supplies around and stuff? Something like that, I said, taking a bite of my burger. He leaned against the table, clearly warming up to his subject. That's neat, man. I mean, it's not like you're doing the real fighting or anything. But hey, somebody's got to move the boxes, right? He laughed at his own joke, and a few relatives within earshot glanced over uncomfortably. I set my plate down and wiped my hands on a napkin, taking my time. The truth was, I could have walked away. I should have walked away. But something about Derrick's tone, the way he'd always looked down on me since we were kids, made me decide to stand my ground this time. So what, you file paperwork for the Army? Derrick continued, his grin widening, as a couple of his buddies from college wandered over to join the conversation. Push paper around all day in some air-conditioned office? No, I said quietly. I fly. Right, you said that. You fly the big cargo planes. That's cool, bro. Respect. The way he said it made it clear he had zero respect for what he thought I did. One of his friends, a guy named Brett, who I vaguely remembered from Derrick's wedding, chimed in. Dude, my girlfriend's brother is a real pilot. He flies F-18s. Now that's badass. Derrick snapped his fingers. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. The real deal, not like transport stuff. He turned back to me, and I could see the challenge in his eyes. You ever wish you could fly the fighters? The real action. I took a long sip of my water, buying myself a moment. The afternoon sun beat down on us, and somewhere behind me, my 10-year-old nephew was showing his friends how to throw a football. This was supposed to be a peaceful family gathering, but Derrick wasn't done. Come on, Jake. Don't be shy. What's your actual rank? What do you really do? I'm just trying to understand here. His tone was patronizing, like he was talking to a child who needed to explain their finger painting. I told you I'm a pilot, but like, what do they call you? Do you guys have nicknames or whatever? Derrick laughed, nudging Brett. Like Top Gun? Do you have a call sign? The conversation around us had started to die down. More family members were paying attention now, and I could feel their eyes on us. My Uncle Marcus Derrick's father was across the yard talking to my dad, but I noticed him glance our way. Yeah, I said, I have a call sign. Derrick's grin spread even wider. Oh yeah, what is it? Cargo box's paper pusher. His friends laughed on cue, and I felt my jaw tighten. Iron Widow. The words came out flat and simple, but they hit the air like a thunderclap. Derrick's laughter continued for about 2 more seconds before he realized nobody else was laughing anymore. In fact, the entire backyard had gone quiet. Even the kids seemed to sense something had shifted. Uncle Marcus was moving toward us now, his expression transforming from curious to something I couldn't quite read. My dad had this look on his face, half pride and half concern, like he knew what was coming but couldn't stop it. Iron Widow Derrick repeated, still chuckling, but with less confidence. That's kind of a weird name, man. What, did you pick that yourself or something? Uncle Marcus reached us and put his hand on Derrick's shoulder. His grip looked tight enough to leave marks. Boy, he said, his voice carrying the kind of command that came from 25 years as a Navy SEAL, apologize now. Derrick looked confused, glancing between his father and me. What, Dad? I was just asking about his job. It's not a big deal. Do you have any idea who Iron Widow is? Uncle Marcus's voice dropped lower. Do you have any idea what you just did? What are you talking about? Derrick's cocky demeanor was cracking, replaced by genuine bewilderment. Brett, who had started to slink away, froze when Uncle Marcus shot him a look that could have stopped a charging bull. The other college friends Derrick had accumulated around him, like accessories, were suddenly very interested in their shoes. My Aunt Linda had stopped flipping burgers entirely, spatula suspended in midair. Even the kids had gone quiet, sensing that something significant was happening, even if they didn't understand what. I could see Derrick's mind working, trying to figure out what he'd stepped in. He glanced at me again, probably searching my face for some hint that this was all a joke, that any second now everyone would laugh and things would go back to normal. But the longer the silence stretched, the more his confident facade crumbled. "Marcus, maybe we should—" My dad started, but Uncle Marcus held up one hand. "No, Tom. Your boy has earned the right to be respected, and my boy needs to learn what respect looks like." Uncle Marcus's jaw was set in that way that said the conversation was far from over. "Derrick, do you remember what I told you about the difference between people who serve and people who talk about serving?" Derrick nodded slowly, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. "Then you should understand that when someone tells you they're in the military, you don't mock them. You don't assume, you don't belittle." Uncle Marcus's voice carried across the yard with the same authority he must have used commanding SEAL teams in combat zones. "And you especially don't run your mouth about things you know absolutely nothing about." My cousin Sarah had moved closer, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. She'd always been the peacemaker in the family, the one who smoothed over arguments and kept everyone connected. But even she seemed to recognize this wasn't a moment for intervention. "Jake," Uncle Marcus said, turning to me, "how many combat hours do you have?" I hesitated. These weren't numbers I typically shared at social gatherings. "Around 450. A murmur rippled through the assembled family members. Uncle Marcus nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd already suspected. "And how many of those were in contested airspace?" "About 230. Derrick's eyes were getting wider with each revelation. Brett looked like he wanted to melt into the grass. The afternoon sun seemed hotter suddenly, or maybe that was just the weight of everyone's attention, focused on our little corner of the yard. For those of you who don't know what that means, Uncle Marcus continued addressing the family as if giving a briefing. Contested airspace means enemy fighters could engage you at any moment. Surface-to-air missiles are actively tracking you. Electronic warfare systems are trying to jam your communications and sensors. It means every second in the air, Jake was seconds away from someone trying to kill him. 230 hours of that. That's not filing paperwork, Derrick. That's putting your life on the line for your country." My mother had tears in her eyes. I could see her gripping my dad's arm, probably wishing Uncle Marcus would stop revealing details that reminded her how dangerous my job actually was. Dad kept his expression neutral, but I knew him well enough to see the pride warring with the same protective fear Mom was showing. "How many aircraft have you shot down?" Uncle Marcus asked, and I knew where this was going. "Uncle Marcus? I don't think. How many, Jake?" I exhaled slowly. 2 confirmed. The backyard erupted in shocked whispers. 2 enemy aircraft. 2 pilots who went up against me and didn't come home. It sounded impressive when stated as a bare fact, but each one represented a mission, a moment of decision, a life ended. These weren't video game statistics. They were human beings with families, even if they had been trying to kill me and my fellow Americans first. Derrick looked like he might be sick. His face had gone from pale to slightly green, and he gripped the edge of the picnic table as if needing something solid to hold on to. 2. You've killed 2 people. "More than 2, I said quietly. "Those are just aircraft. Ground targets are different. The mission in Syria involved multiple ground targets. But yes, I've killed people, Derrick. That's what combat pilots do. We don't sit in air-conditioned offices moving boxes around. We fly into the most dangerous airspace in the world, and we complete missions that keep soldiers on the ground alive. We drop ordnance on enemy positions. We engage hostile aircraft when necessary. We do whatever it takes to protect American lives and American interests." The weight of those words settled over everyone. This wasn't the sanitized version of military service people saw in movies. This was the reality, the part that didn't make it into recruiting commercials or inspirational social media posts. My nephew, the one who had been so excited to hear about my job, looked thoughtful, trying to reconcile cool pilot uncle with this new, harder information. He was old enough at 10 to understand that war wasn't a game, but young enough that the full weight of it hadn't settled on him yet. Uncle Marcus must have sensed the mood shifting into uncomfortable territory because he adjusted his approach. "Jake's not telling you this to brag. He's telling you because you asked Derrick. You pushed and prodded and mocked until you forced him to explain exactly what he does. And now you're learning that the world isn't as simple as you thought it was. There are people like Jake who go into danger, so people like you can have marketing careers and argue about branding strategies in safe conference rooms. I get it, Dad. I screwed up. Derek's voice was barely above a whisper. No, I don't think you do get it yet. Uncle Marcus wasn't backing down. Jake has been coming to these family gatherings for years. How many times have you asked him real questions about his life? How many times have you actually listened when he talked? Or were you too busy waiting for your turn to talk about your promotion, your new car, your investment portfolio? Derek opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. The answer was written all over his face. He couldn't remember a single meaningful conversation with me that wasn't about him. My Aunt Linda finally set down her spatula and walked over, putting her hand on her husband's shoulder. Marcus, honey, maybe we should let the boys talk this out themselves. In a minute, Linda. Uncle Marcus's tone softened slightly for his wife, but his attention remained fixed on Derek. I want to make sure this lesson sticks because if my son is going to walk around acting superior to people, he better actually be superior. And right now, standing next to Jake, he's not even close. That hit Derek hard. I could see it in the way his shoulders slumped, in the way he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Part of me felt bad for him. This was a public humiliation at a family event after all. But another part of me, the part that had endured years of his subtle digs and condescending comments, felt a grim satisfaction watching his ego deflate. My dad stepped forward, and I could see he was trying to decide whether to help or let this play out. Uncle Marcus looked at me with something close to reverence mixed with concern. He'd been in special operations long enough to know exactly what my call sign meant, even if most civilians didn't. Derek. Uncle Marcus said it slowly, never taking his eyes off me. Your cousin flies an F-22 Raptor. He's not some cargo pilot. He's one of the most highly trained fighter pilots in the United States Air Force. An Iron Widow isn't just a cute nickname. It's a call sign earned in combat. The color drained from Derek's face. Brett and the other college buddies suddenly found reasons to be somewhere else, drifting away like smoke. The backyard remained eerily quiet, with only the distant sound of traffic and someone's wind chimes breaking the silence. How was I supposed to know? Derek stammered. You could have listened when he answered your questions, Uncle Marcus said. You could have shown some basic respect instead of assuming you knew better. I held up my hand. Uncle Marcus, it's fine. He didn't know. It's not fine, Jake. This boy has been running his mouth about things he doesn't understand since he was 15 years old. Uncle Marcus's jaw was set, and I realized this wasn't just about today. This was about years of Derek's attitude, his condescension, his need to be the smartest guy in every room. Derek turned to me, and for the first time since we were kids, I saw genuine humility in his eyes. Jake, I'm sorry. I really didn't know. I thought I don't know what I thought. You thought I was some paper pusher who wasn't good enough to do what you considered real military work, I said, keeping my voice level. You thought that about me since we were teenagers. Remember when I told everyone at Christmas that I got accepted to the Air Force Academy? You said it was cute that I wanted to play soldier. Derek winced. I was a stupid kid. You were 19 and you haven't changed much. Uncle Marcus released Derek's shoulder, but remained planted between us like a referee. Jake, would you mind telling these people what Iron Widow means? Because I think this boy needs to understand exactly how far out of line he was. I didn't particularly want to do this. The call sign, the combat history, the classified missions, they were all things I'd worked hard to leave behind when I came home on leave. But looking around at my family's expectant faces, at Derek's pale complexion, and my dad's encouraging nod, I realized maybe it was time to stop hiding. I got my call sign during a deployment to Syria. I began aware that every word I said was being absorbed by at least 30 relatives. Our squadron was providing air support for a special forces team that had been pinned down by enemy fire. 3 aircraft went in before me, and all 3 had to break off due to surface-to-air missile threats and heavy anti-aircraft fire. The defensive systems were too dense, and the approach vectors were being actively targeted. Derek was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Uncle Marcus nodded slowly, clearly familiar with the type of scenario I was describing. The ground team was about to be overrun. They had maybe 10 minutes before their position was completely compromised, so I volunteered to go in. I paused, remembering the weight of that decision, the calculations running through my head as I pushed the aircraft to its limits. I went in lower than standard protocols, recommend use terrain masking to avoid the SAM radar coverage, and came in from an approach angle the enemy wasn't expecting. The mission required taking out multiple ground targets while evading active tracking systems. I completed the objective and got everyone out. Jesus, someone whispered behind me. I think it was my cousin Sarah. The call sign came because of how I flew that mission. Fast, decisive, and according to my commanding officer, with no hesitation, even when it looked impossible. The name itself, I hesitated, unsure how much detail to share at a family barbecue. It came from my wingman. He said watching me work that mission was like watching death itself fly. Clinical, precise, unavoidable. The widow part refers to the outcome for the enemy combatants on the ground that day. The operation was successful, but it wasn't pretty. I didn't mention that most call signs in the Air Force come from embarrassing moments or mistakes during training. Mine was an exception, given after that mission, by unanimous squadron vote. It replaced my original call sign from flight school, which had been considerably less intimidating. But that detail didn't seem relevant to share with my family. Sarah stepped forward, her nursing background probably making her more comfortable with difficult realities than most. Jake, how do you deal with that, knowing you've taken lives? It was a more honest question than I'd expected, and it deserved an honest answer. It's not easy. The Air Force provides counseling and we debrief after every mission. But at the end of the day, I focus on the lives saved rather than the lives taken. That ground team in Syria, 12 special operators who went home to their families because I did my job. That's what I hold on to. Do you ever have nightmares? She asked, her voice gentle. Sometimes. Less than you'd think. The training prepares you mentally as well as physically. And being in the cockpit, there's a distance that ground troops don't have. I'm not saying it doesn't affect me, but it's different than close quarters combat. I glanced at Uncle Marcus. Your dad could probably speak to that better than I could. Uncle Marcus nodded grimly. Different kind of warfare, different kind of weight to carry, but weight nonetheless. Every person who's been in real combat carries something home with them. The key is learning to carry it without letting it crush you. Dererick had been silent during this exchange, and when I looked at him, I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine contemplation. Maybe even the beginning of understanding. He wasn't just embarrassed anymore. He was actually processing the reality of what military service meant beyond the patriotic platitudes and flag-waving ceremonies. The mission. Jake's talking about Uncle Marcus happened about 2 years ago, right? 2 years and 4 months, I confirmed. I remember when the details of that operation filtered through military channels. They kept most of it classified. But the word was that an Air Force pilot had pulled off something extraordinary under impossible conditions. The ground team involved wrote letters to his chain of command. That doesn't happen often. Uncle Marcus looked at Dererick pointedly. They wrote letters because Jake's actions that day were the difference between a successful mission and a catastrophic loss of American lives. And you want to know the really impressive part? Dererick nodded mutely. He was flying solo. No wingman because of mechanical issues with the other aircraft scheduled for his element. He went into that nightmare scenario alone, succeeded where 3 others couldn't, and brought everyone home safe. That's not filing paperwork, son. That's being the best at what you do when the stakes are life and death. I shifted uncomfortably. Uncle Marcus, I appreciate the support, but I was just doing my job. Any pilot in my squadron would have done the same thing. That's not true, and you know it, he countered. 3 pilots before you tried and couldn't complete the mission. Stop downplaying your accomplishments, Jake. You've earned the right to stand tall. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was being told to stop downplaying my achievements by the same man whose son had spent the last hour doing exactly that to me. But Uncle Marcus was right in a way. I had spent years minimizing what I did, partly out of security concerns, and partly out of not wanting to deal with the attention. Maybe it was time to stop apologizing for being good at my job. Brett Dererick's friend, who had been frozen in place this whole time, finally found his voice. Man, I had no idea. When Dererick said his cousin was in the Air Force, I just assumed. I don't know what I assumed. You assumed what most civilians assume, I said, not unkindly. That military means one thing, usually what you see in movies. But there are thousands of jobs in the service, and most people don't know the details unless they've been in themselves or have family who served. My girlfriend's brother, the F-18 pilot I mentioned, Brett, looks sheepish. He flies transport versions, does logistics runs between carriers and shore bases, which is still cool and important, but after hearing what you do, man, I feel like an idiot for bringing him up as some kind of comparison. Don't, I said. Every job in the military matters. The cargo pilots, the mechanics, the intelligence analysts, the medics, everyone plays a part. I couldn't do my job without hundreds of other people doing theirs. That's what Dererick here doesn't understand. It's not about having the flashiest job or the coolest title. It's about the mission. Dererick finally spoke again, his voice steadier than before. I've been thinking about what you said earlier about how I never really listened to you. You're right. I don't think I've ever had a real conversation with you where I wasn't just waiting to talk about myself. And it's not just you. I do that with everyone. At least you're recognizing it. And Linda said, having stayed close to monitor the situation, recognition is the first step toward change. How did you know? Derek asked me suddenly. How did you know that being a fighter pilot was what you wanted to do? Because I'm sitting here with my marketing degree and my job that pays well, and I'm realizing I don't actually care about any of it. I picked this career because it looked good, because it impressed people at parties. But you picked something that mattered. The vulnerability in his question surprised me. This wasn't the cocky, confident Derek I'd known for 26 years. This was someone who just had their entire worldview shaken and was trying to figure out what came next. I knew because when I was 16, Uncle Marcus took me up in a small plane he'd rented. The memory is clear as if it had happened yesterday. 5 minutes into that flight, I knew. I felt it in my bones. This was what I was supposed to do. Not everyone gets that kind of clarity, and that's okay. But once I had it, everything else was just working toward that goal. I've never felt that way about anything, Derek admitted. Maybe that's why I've been so dismissive of other people's passions. I don't have one of my own. Uncle Marcus's expression softened slightly. Then maybe it's time you found one. You're 23 years old, Derek. You've got your whole life ahead of you. But you need to stop comparing yourself to everyone else and figure out what actually matters to you. Not what looks good on paper, not what impresses your friends. What matters to you? It was turning into a therapy session in the middle of a 4th of July barbecue, but nobody seemed inclined to stop it. Sometimes families needed these moments of raw honesty, even if they were uncomfortable, especially if they were uncomfortable. Uncle Marcus was nodding more vigorously now. That mission you're talking about, I heard about it through channels. The after-action reports filtered through Naval Special Warfare because it involved joint operations. They don't use names in the briefings, but they sure as hell talk about the pilot, with call sign Iron Widow, who pulled off what 3 other pilots said was impossible. He looked at Derek with barely contained frustration. Your cousin is a legitimate combat veteran who saved American lives under fire, and you just mocked him for filing paperwork. Derek looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. I'm so sorry, Jake. I had no idea. I've been a complete ass to you for years, and you never said anything. Why didn't you tell me what you really did? Because I don't need to prove myself to you, I said simply. I know what I do. My squadron knows. The people who depend on me know. Your opinion doesn't change any of that. My dad stepped forward, then putting his hand on my shoulder. Jake, we're all proud of you. But maybe you could have said something sooner. Half the family thinks you work in logistics because you never correct anyone. I work in a classified field, Dad. I can't exactly go around announcing the details of my missions at dinner parties. I softened my tone because I knew he meant well. And honestly, I preferred it when people underestimated me. It made life simpler. Plus, as a major, I'm expected to maintain operational security even with family. Aunt Linda approached with a fresh burger, apparently deciding that food was the solution to awkward family tension. Well, I think it's wonderful what you do, Jake. And Derek, you owe your cousin more than just an apology. You owe him your respect. I know, Mom. Derek's voice was small, nothing like the booming confidence from 10 minutes ago. Jake, is there anything I can do to make this right? I thought about it for a moment, watching my nephew throw another wobbly pass across the lawn. You can stop assuming you know everything about everyone. You can listen more and talk less. And maybe next time someone tells you what they do, you can take them at their word instead of deciding their job isn't impressive enough for you. That's fair, Derek admitted. I've been a jerk to you especially, but probably to a lot of people. Uncle Marcus clapped his son on the shoulder, though with considerably less force than before. That's the first smart thing you've said all day. Now apologize properly. Derek straightened up, and I could see him trying to pull together some dignity. Jake, I sincerely apologize for disrespecting you, your service, and everything you've accomplished. I was ignorant and arrogant, and I had no right to talk to you the way I did. You're a better man than I've given you credit for, and I'm sorry it took my dad calling me out for me to see it. I extended my hand, and this time when we shook, there was no competition. Apology accepted. Let's just move forward. The tension in the backyard finally broke, and conversation slowly resumed. My nephew ran over football in hand, completely oblivious to what had just transpired. Uncle Jake, can you teach me how to throw a spiral? Sure thing, buddy. I tossed him the ball and showed him how to grip the laces properly. As I demonstrated the throwing motion, I caught Derek watching from the picnic table, his earlier smugness replaced with something that looked like respect or maybe just shock. The kid was 10 years old and full of energy, his throws wild and enthusiastic even if they didn't spiral yet. Uncle Marcus pulled up a lawn chair next to where I was coaching my nephew. You handled that well, Jake. Better than I would have at your age. I learned from watching you, sir. You always said the best operators are the ones who can de-escalate a situation before it becomes a problem. He chuckled. I also taught you when to stand your ground. Dererick needed to hear that. He's been coasting on charm and family connections his whole life. Maybe this will be a wake-up call. Maybe I agreed, though I wasn't holding my breath. Some people change when confronted with their own behavior. Others just get better at hiding it. My dad joined us carrying 3 beers. Well, that was more excitement than I expected at a family barbecue. Your mother is going to kill me for not warning her that you told Dererick your call sign. I didn't plan on telling anyone, I said. Dererick pushed, and Uncle Marcus recognized the name. Damn right I did, Uncle Marcus said, accepting a beer. Any seal worth his trident knows about Iron Widow. There's a reason your name comes up in tactical discussions. What you did that day saved American lives, and you did it when everyone else said it couldn't be done. My nephew tugged on my sleeve. Uncle Jake, did you really save people's lives? I looked down at his eager face, wondering how to explain combat to a 10-year-old. Yeah, buddy, I did. That's what I do. That's so cool. When I grow up, I want to be a pilot like you. His enthusiasm made me smile, but it also reminded me of the weight that came with the job. If you want to be a pilot, you need to study hard. Stay in shape and always treat people with respect. Can you do that? Yes, sir. He saluted me with a kind of serious expression only kids can pull off, then ran back to his friends to continue their game. Uncle Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me. How much longer you got on this leave? 2 weeks. In the Air Force. I've got 6 more years on my current contract. You thinking about staying in after that? It was a question I'd been asking myself a lot lately. I don't know. I love flying. I love the mission. But there's a cost to it. You know that better than anyone. He nodded slowly, the understanding of someone who'd spent decades in special operations. The cost is real, but so is the purpose. Just make sure whatever you decide you're doing it for the right reasons. Dererick approached hesitantly, carrying a beer that looked untouched. Hey Jake, can I talk to you for a minute? Uncle Marcus stood up. I'll give you 2 some space. Jake, good to see you, son. Don't be a stranger. He shook my hand with a firm grip of mutual respect, then headed back toward the grill. Dererick sat down in the vacated chair, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. I've been thinking about something. You said earlier that you never corrected people when they assumed you worked in logistics. Was that because of me? Partially, I admitted. You weren't the only one who made assumptions, but you were the loudest about it. God, I'm such an idiot. He rubbed his face with both hands. All those years, all those comments about you wasting your potential by going military instead of college. I was the one wasting potential, wasn't I? I wouldn't say that. You have a good job, a nice life. Not everyone needs to be in the military. But I didn't need to tear you down to make myself feel better about my choices. He looked at me directly for the first time since his apology. That's what I was doing, right? I chose the safe path, the easy path. And seeing you go do something harder, something that actually mattered, made me feel inadequate. So I convinced myself your path was less impressive than mine. I hadn't expected that level of self-awareness from Dererick. That's pretty insightful. Yeah, well, having my SEAL father tell me I'm a disgrace in front of the whole family will do that to you. He tried to smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. He's barely said 2 words to me since you dropped your call sign. I think he's ashamed of me. He's not ashamed. He's disappointed. There's a difference. Is there? Because right now it feels pretty similar. I took a long drink, considering my next words carefully. Your dad served his country for 25 years. He did things most people can't imagine, made sacrifices that never made the news, and came home to be a good father and husband. When he looks at you, he doesn't see someone who needs to be in the military. He sees someone with potential, who wasted on ego and arrogance. That's what disappoints him. Dererick absorbed this quietly. How do I fix it? Start by actually listening to people. Stop trying to be the center of attention. Use your education and your opportunities to do something meaningful instead of just making money and looking good. I gestured toward the family gathering around us. Half the people here have stories you've never heard because you've never bothered to ask. My Aunt Linda volunteers at a homeless shelter. Your brother coaches inner-city kids for free. Everyone has something valuable to contribute, but you're too busy performing to notice. You're right. He set his untouched beer on the ground. I've been performing my whole life. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect image. But what have I actually done that matters? That's a question you need to answer for yourself. We sat in silence for a while, watching the family mill about. Someone had started a game of cornhole, and the competitive trash talk was flowing freely. It was normal, comfortable, the kind of family atmosphere I'd missed during my deployments. Derrick eventually stood up. Thank you for not completely writing me off. I wouldn't have blamed you if you did. We're family, Derrick. That counts for something. He nodded and walked away, his shoulders a little less square than usual. I watched him go, wondering if this would actually change anything, or if we'd be back to the same dynamics by next year's barbecue. My mom appeared with a slice of her famous apple pie. Heard you caused quite a stir. Wasn't really planning on it. Good. Your father is over there bragging to anyone who will listen now. I swear he's told the Iron Widow story 3 times already, and he's adding details that definitely weren't there the first time. She sat down beside me, balancing her own slice of pie. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Just tired of pretending to be less than I am to make other people comfortable. You've always done that, even as a kid. Remember when you won the science fair in 8th grade, but you told everyone it was just luck? I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, well, Derrick told me I was a nerd for caring about science. Easier to play it off than deal with his teasing. And you've been doing that ever since, playing small so Derrick and people like him don't feel threatened. She put her hand on my knee. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself today. Even if it did give your father new bragging material, he's going to be insufferable, isn't he? Absolutely, but he's earned it. We both have. Our son is a hero, Jake. Let us be proud of that. The word hero always made me uncomfortable. Heroes were people in movies, not guys who just did their jobs. But looking at my mom's face, seeing the genuine pride there, I realized maybe I needed to let her have this moment. Let my family see who I really was, instead of hiding behind vague job descriptions and deflections. Okay, Mom, you and Dad can brag. Just keep it reasonable. All right. She laughed and kissed my cheek. No promises. Now eat your pie before your father comes over here and claims it's his victory dessert. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself engaged in more genuine conversations than I'd had at family events in years. People asked real questions about my service, and I gave real answers within the bounds of what I could share. My cousin Sarah told me about her work as an ICU nurse, stories of life and death that rivaled anything I'd experienced. Uncle Marcus shared a heavily redacted story from his SEAL days that had everyone laughing at the absurdity of military bureaucracy. Derrick kept his distance for most of the evening, but as the sun started to set and families began packing up to leave, he approached me one final time. Hey Jake, before you go, I wanted to give you something. He handed me a business card for his marketing firm. I know this is going to sound self-serving after everything today, but if you ever decide to leave the Air Force, give me a call. We work with a lot of defense contractors and veteran-owned businesses. I think you'd be an asset to any organization, and I'd like to help if I can. I looked at the card, then at Derrick's face. He seemed sincere, though time would tell if this transformation stuck. Thanks, I'll keep it in mind. And Jake, next time you're in town, maybe we could grab coffee or something. Actually talk. I mean, without me being a complete jackass. I'd like that, I said, and surprisingly I meant it. As I drove away from the barbecue that evening, the Georgia sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I thought about how different things could have gone. I could have stayed quiet, let Derrick's assumptions roll off my back like I had for years. But something about today, about Uncle Marcus's immediate understanding and my dad's silent encouragement, had given me permission to stop hiding. Iron Widow wasn't just my call sign. It was proof that I'd faced impossible odds and come out the other side. It represented every hour of training, every difficult decision, every mission where failure wasn't an option. Derrick's mockery hadn't diminished any of that. If anything, his reaction when he learned the truth validated everything I'd worked for. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Marcus. Proud of you, Jake. Takes real courage to stay humble when you have every right to brag. But it also takes courage to stand up when someone crosses a line. You showed both today. I smiled at the message. Coming from a man like Uncle Marcus, that meant everything. 2 weeks later, back on base, preparing for my next deployment, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a framed photo from the barbecue one I hadn't known was being taken. It showed me demonstrating the football throw to my nephew Uncle Marcus and my dad watching from their lawn chairs. Everyone relaxed and happy. On the back, my mom had written, "We're proud of who you are, not just what you do, but we're proud of that too. Love, Mom and Dad." Beneath that, in different handwriting, Derrick had added, "Thanks for the lesson in humility. Working on being better. See you at Christmas. D." I placed the frame on my desk right next to my wings and my squadron patch. Reminders of different kinds of battles, different kinds of victories. The military had taught me how to fly, how to fight, and how to lead. But my family, even the difficult parts of my family, had taught me something equally important: when to speak up and when to stay silent, and that knowing the difference was its own kind of courage. The next morning, during our pre-flight briefing, my squadron commander asked if I'd had a good leave. "Yes, sir," I replied. "Reconnected with some family. Cleared the air on a few things." He nodded approvingly. "Good to hear, Iron Widow. We need you sharp for this deployment." Around the room, my fellow pilots sat ready each, with their own call signs earned through blood, sweat, and impossible missions. Viper, Ghost, Phoenix, Hawk. We were a collection of warriors who didn't need to prove ourselves to anyone outside these walls. But occasionally it felt good to remind the outside world that we existed, that we were out there protecting freedoms they took for granted. Derrick would probably never fully understand what I did or what it cost, but maybe that was okay. Maybe his journey toward being a better person didn't require him to know every detail of mine. The apology was enough. The effort to change was enough. As I strapped into my aircraft that afternoon for a training run, the familiar weight of the helmet settling onto my head, I thought about my nephew saying he wanted to be a pilot like me. Maybe someday he would be. Maybe he'd earn his own call sign, fight his own battles, prove his own worth. And maybe if I'd done my job right at that barbecue, he'd do it without needing to prove anything to anyone except himself. The tower cleared me for a takeoff, and I pushed the throttle forward, feeling the raw power of the F-22 surge beneath me. The aircraft responded to my touch like an extension of my own body, decades of engineering and billions of dollars of technology, all focused on a single purpose. Iron Widow lifted into the sky, and for a moment, all the family drama and social complexities fell away. Up here, there were only physics and skill, mission and purpose. Up here, I was exactly who I needed to be. But down there at barbecues and Christmas dinners and family reunions, I'd learned something valuable too. I didn't have to choose between being the pilot and being Jake. I could be both. I could be the warrior and the nephew, the hero and the cousin, the classified operator, and the guy who teaches kids how to throw a football. Derrick's question at the barbecue, "So what, you file paperwork for the Army," had been meant as a dismissal, but in trying to diminish me, he'd given me an opportunity to stop diminishing myself. I wasn't just some paper pusher. I wasn't just some guy who moved boxes. I was Iron Widow.